was just past 10 when I heard it. A sound so out of place in the stillness of our remote mountain home that it stopped me mid-step. It wasn't the hoot of an owl or the rustle of deer. It was more like a moan, weak, raw, wounded. I stepped out onto the porch, gripping the flashlight tighter than usual. Mist drifted low along the tree line, thick and heavy like it hadn't lifted all day. The kind of mist that makes the forest feel like it's holding its breath. The noise came again, higher this time, more desperate. It was coming from near the old gravel road, the one that twists behind our tool shed and disappears into the woods. I followed the sound, boots crunching soft frost. The beam of my flashlight danced through pine trunks until it froze, not because I stopped moving, but because I couldn't believe what I saw. There, on the edge of the ditch, lay a small shape, pale, curled in on itself, breathing raggedly. My first thought was that someone's dog had been hit by a car, but as I stepped closer, I realized this was no dog. It was a cub, but not just any cub, spotted with a long tail, large paws even for its size, a snow leopard. I didn't move, neither did it. Its eyes opened, pale gray-blue, and locked with mine, not wild with fear, not ready to attack, just tired, maybe even impossibly. Pleading? This wasn't just an animal, this was a survivor, and it was looking at me like I was its last hope. Every instinct told me to back away. This couldn't be right. Snow leopards didn't belong here, not in this range, not this low in the valley, and definitely not alone. I stood there, paralyzed. Mist clung to my shoulders, and something deep inside me stirred, something between dread and duty. "What the hell happened to you?" I whispered. The cub tried to lift its head, but it barely had the strength. Its chest heaved. A soft, pained sound escaped. Then its head dropped again. Carefully, slowly, I crouched beside it. Its left side was torn open, not bleeding anymore, but crusted with dirt and dried blood. Something metallic gleamed from within the wound. Barbed wire. A trap. No mother in sight. No sounds of movement. Around us. Just the cub and me. An impossible decision began forming in my mind. I should have called someone. Animal control. Wildlife services. But the nearest station was 2 hours down a switchback road, and this cub wouldn't last half that time. I unzipped my coat and slipped it off. When I gently wrapped it around the snow leopard, it didn't resist, just trembled. The walk back to the house felt like a mile. Every step I expected something. A growl from the forest, a shout, a gunshot. But the night stayed silent except for the faint sound of the cub breathing. Jenny opened the door before I reached it. Her eyes widened when she saw what was in my arms. "What is that?" "Snow leopard cub," I said. "Injured." She blinked hard. "You gotta be kidding me." It was just lying there like it had given up. Jenny stared at me, then the bundle. "Is it safe to bring that thing here?" "I don't know," I admitted, but I couldn't leave it. We cleared out the old tool shed. I laid the cub on a bed of towels and blankets. It didn't move. Its breathing was faint but steady. I placed a shallow dish of water nearby, but it didn't even twitch. Jenny hovered at the door. "If it survives the night, what then?" "I don't know," I said again. She sighed and closed the shed door. We didn't sleep. Every snap of a branch outside made us jump. I checked the window again and again, half expecting a full-grown snow leopard to come crashing through the trees. But none came. Around 4 a.m., Jenny brought me coffee. Her hands were shaking. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Why are we doing this?" I looked toward the shed. Because something out there needed help, and I was the one who found it. Just before sunrise, the quiet broke. Not with a roar, but a scream. A wild, piercing call from deep in the Wamn forest. Not close, but not far either. Another answered, then another. The air turned still. Jenny gripped my arm. "They're looking for it," she said. I nodded slowly, my throat dry. "Yeah, and they're close." The morning light crept in through the window. I didn't move from the porch. I just stood there, listening, trying to understand what I'd started and wondering if the forest would let me finish it. The morning after, the snow leopard cub felt heavier than most. The air was still, but my nerves weren't. The animal hadn't moved all night. It lay curled on the blankets in the shed, just rising and falling like a leaf floating in slow motion. I stepped inside quietly. The faint smell of blood mixed with old wood and earth hit me right away. The cub's eyes were half closed, its body shivering despite the blankets. I knelt beside it and gently checked around. The metal shard was still. There, embedded near its rib. It had to come out. I knew I couldn't do it alone. Jenny watched from the kitchen as I grabbed the keys. "Where are you going?" "Mike, if anyone can help, it's him." "You think he'll actually come out here for a wild cat?" "He doesn't have to. I'll bring him here if I have to carry him." Mike lived down the ridge, past the washed-out bridge and the spot where last winter's rock slide had taken out the switchback. His cabin was small, tucked into the slope, almost hidden by trees. I knocked once. No answer. Then twice. Louder. "Jesus, calm down," came his voice from behind the door. He cracked it open, blinking like he hadn't slept. "You got a dying dog or what?" "Snow leopard," I said. He blinked again, slower this time. "You're joking." "I wish I were." I told him everything. He didn't speak until... "They finished?" "Let me grab my bag," he muttered. Back at the house, Mike didn't say a word as he examined the cub. His movements were careful, precise. He cleaned the wound, cut away fur, disinfected the area. When he finally pulled the metal shard free, the cub let out a long, low growl, more exhaustion than anger. "It was caught in something," Mike said. "Maybe barbed wire, maybe a trap. Lucky it didn't bleed out." I nodded. It looked at me, Mike, like it knew. He didn't reply. Sarah appeared in the doorway not long after. "Can I see it?" Jenny tried to stop her, but I waved her in. Sarah crept in slowly, eyes wide. She knelt near me, then gasped when she saw the animal. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's hurt," I said. "We're trying to help." She reached out, then pulled back. "What's its name?" "It doesn't have one." Sarah thought for a moment. "Frost. Because of the spots, and because it's quiet but strong." Mike looked at me but didn't object. Frost. The name settled around the room like a breath. Mike worked another hour, administering antibiotics, stitching. What he could. When he finished, he looked tired. "It's stable, for now," he said. "But it'll need rest, food, no stress." Jenny followed him outside while I stayed with Frost. I watched her sides rise and fall, slowly, but more steadily. I placed a bowl of water beside her again. This time she lifted her head and licked once before resting again. That afternoon, everything changed. Our phone started ringing. First a friend from town, then another. Rumors had spread. Someone had seen me carrying the cub the night before. Someone else saw Mike's truck. The whispers turned to warnings. Jenny read one text aloud. "You can't. Keep a predator around your family. This is insane." Another message. "If that thing hurts someone, it's on you." Sarah didn't understand why everyone was suddenly angry. She spent the evening by the shed sketching Frost from a distance. That night, Jenny spoke softly but firmly. "They're going to force us to give her up." "I know. What are we going to do?" I didn't have an answer. We were just settling into bed when we heard it again. Not a growl, not a howl, but the echo of something big moving through the trees. I sat up. "Stay here," I told Jenny. Outside, the moonlight barely lit the edge of the trees. I held the flashlight steady. Something had been there. The air was different, charged. At the shed, I found fresh marks in the dirt. Claw prints, but not Frost's. Larger and other prints. Boots, side by side. Human and feline. Someone had been near. Too close. And they weren't alone. Inside, Frost hadn't moved, but her ears twitched. She'd heard it too. I closed the door and locked it tight. Then I sat on the porch, shotgun across my lap, not to hunt but to guard. Because something was coming and I didn't know if we were ready. I didn't expect to see her. It was just after sunrise and I'd stepped out to feed the chickens, still, half asleep, clutching my second cup of coffee. The frost was crisp underfoot, the woods silent, not even birds yet. Then I felt it, that strange pressure in the air, like being watched. I turned toward the tree line. There, halfway between the fence and the first row of spruce, stood a large cat. Not moving, not blinking. It was her, the mother. She was massive, lean muscle under thick spotted fur. Her tail hung low, curling slightly at the end. Her eyes, pale and endless, locked onto mine. I froze. She didn't crouch, didn't growl, but the tension was electric. She wasn't here to attack, she was here to see. Behind me, the shed sat quiet. Inside, her cub. Frost was recovering, slow but steady. The mother glanced toward it, then back to me. I didn't move. I raised my hand slightly, not threatening, just acknowledging her presence. We stood there for maybe a minute, then she turned, soundless, and vanished into the woods like smoke. Back inside, Jenny was pale. I saw her from the window. Did she come close? No. Just watched. She's looking for the cub. I think she already knows where it is. Frost didn't react much that morning, but her breathing was stronger. She drank some water, didn't eat, but sniffed at the meat. That afternoon, the sheriff showed up. Richard always wore too much leather and had a way of knocking that felt like a warning. He didn't wait to be invited in. "You really got a snow leopard in there?" he asked. I nodded. "You know I'm supposed to report this." "I know, but I haven't yet." He scratched his beard. "I've got half the town calling my office. Kids are scared. Farmers are threatening to shoot anything with fur." "She's not a threat. You can't know that. She's a cub, and she's injured." We stared at each other for a long time. "I'll keep it quiet for now," he said, "but you need to figure out what you're doing before someone else does it for you." That night, the argument finally hit. Jenny had held it in long enough. "Our daughter is being bullied at school," she snapped, "because we're the crazy people keeping a predator in the shed." "I know you think no one makes it okay." I didn't plan any of this, I said, "but you didn't stop it either." Her voice cracked. "I'm scared. For Sarah, for us." I didn't have a reply. That night I sat in the shed with Frost. She was curled tight, still and quiet, but her eyes followed me now. There was recognition in them. Not trust, not yet, but something. Then she did something she hadn't done before. She pressed her nose lightly to my boot. Just once. Then laid her head back down. That tiny gesture hit me harder than any threat ever could. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, old Mr. Carter from 2 properties over knocked on the door. "My retriever's gone," he said flatly. I blinked. "Gone?" "Vanished last night. Chain snapped. No tracks, I'm sorry, but that doesn't mean I don't know what you've got in that shed." Jenny stepped in, tense. "She hasn't left the property." "She doesn't have to," Carter said. "Where there's one, there's more. If I see anything near my house again, I'll shoot it." He didn't wait for a reply. Later that night, I went to check the shed before bed. The temperature had dropped. Fast. Frost was awake, pacing softly. Her ears were up. Then I heard it, a sound outside. Footsteps. Not paws. Boots. I turned off the light and cracked the door just a little. What I saw chilled me. Tracks in the snow. Large cat prints. And, beside them, boot prints. Human and snow leopard. Together. I didn't see anyone, but someone had come close. Too close. The next morning, the tracks were still there. Fresh and clear. Someone, or something, had tried to reach Frost. I didn't know if they meant to. Help or harm. But now I knew we weren't the only ones watching the woods anymore. They came around lunchtime. 2 vans with news logos parked just off our gravel drive, their tires sinking into the wet mud. I knew this would happen eventually, but it still hit like a punch to the gut. One of the reporters, a tall woman in a red jacket, stepped out and started talking before she even reached the gate. "Is this the place with the snow leopard?" Jenny met her at the door before I could. "No comment. We just want to inform the public. People have a right to know if there's a dangerous predator living near their homes." "She's not dangerous," I said, coming up behind Jenny. "And this is private property." They didn't care. Cameras were already rolling. That evening our phones didn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in. Some curious, some furious. More than a few threatening. Jenny stood in the kitchen scrolling through her phone, jaw clenched. "I can't believe they came here," she muttered. "What are we supposed to do now?" Sarah came home from school with her head down. She went straight to her room. I knocked gently after a while. "They called you a freak," she said before I could ask. "Said my dad was some kind of wildcat hoarder." I sat beside her. "You want me to stop this?" She shook her head slowly. "No, but I don't want people to hate us either." That night I stood outside the shed, watching Frost. She was getting stronger, moving more. Her coat was shinier now, but she stayed near the far wall, eyes always on the trees. I thought about letting her go. Early the next morning, I carried her carefully, gently, to the edge of the forest. Her body was still light in my arms, but tense. When we reached the ridge, I stopped. "If you want to go," I said, "this is your chance." She didn't move. Then I saw her, behind a low rise, the mother, standing still, watching. I set Frost down and stepped back. She stood on her own, ears forward, but the mother didn't come. Forward, didn't call, just stared. Frost took a step, then another, but stopped, turned her head toward me. I waited, breath caught in my chest. Then slowly, she came back. I carried her home in silence. That evening, I called Mike. He showed up with a tired face and a quiet voice. "She's not ready," I told him. "She will be," he said, "but not yet." We sat on the porch, two men listening. To the wind move through pine. "You realize you're not just nursing a wild animal," Mike said. "You're stepping into something bigger. We either learn to live with the wild, or we try to wipe it out. I don't want to tame her. You're not. You're just giving her a shot." We sat in silence a while longer. Then the lights cut out. Everything snapped off at once, porch, kitchen, shed. Silence dropped like a curtain. Jenny called from inside. "What happened?" I was already moving. The breaker box had been shattered. Not tripped. Smashed with something heavy. I grabbed a flashlight and ran for the shed. The door was open. Frost was gone. Tracks led into the trees, both animal and human. I followed until the prints disappeared into wet leaves and underbrush. It was too dark, too quiet. Back at the house, Jenny was on the phone. "They took her, didn't they?" "I don't know," I said, but I did. The next morning I went out before sunrise. I scanned the ridgeline until I saw them, tiny paw prints pressed deep in fresh mud, heading northeast. Not toward the mother, not toward the ridge, somewhere else entirely. She hadn't been taken, she had chosen, and now I had to decide if I would follow. We left before first light, just me and Sarah. No one said anything. I packed light, just a first aid kit, a pair of old binoculars, and some jerky in case we needed energy. The fog hung over the valley like a blanket that didn't want to let go. The world was hushed, waiting. Sarah didn't ask questions. She just rode beside me in the truck, clutching her thermos, staring through the window. I think she knew. We weren't just chasing tracks. We were chasing closure. I followed the paw prints from the day before, winding up toward the northeast ridge, beyond where the game trails usually end. No one really goes out there anymore. Too steep, too quiet. After a couple of hours, we left the truck behind. The rest we'd do on foot. The higher we climbed, the colder it got. Our breaths came out in puffs. Pine needles crackled under our boots. Somewhere far off, a raven called. "Do you think she's okay?" Sarah asked softly. "I think she's strong. Strong enough to be alone." I looked at her. She never really was alone. We hiked for hours, stopping only when we had to. Frost's tracks weren't hard to follow. She moved with purpose, Not like a frightened animal fleeing, more like someone going home. Near midday, we reached a small rise. Beyond it, the forest opened into a B-shaped clearing. Trees circled tight around the edge. In the middle, half covered in snow and fallen branches, was a rocky outcrop. I saw her before she saw us. The mother, lying in the shadow of a boulder, breathing shallow, one leg stretched at a strange angle, her side bruised, blood dried on, her flank, but her eyes were open, watching, and next to her 2 tiny cubs, newborns, probably just a few days old, and between them stood Frost, alive, alert, not hiding. She looked different now, stronger, leaner, her coat brighter, her tail held high. She was guarding them. We didn't move. Just stood there breathing. She didn't growl, didn't run, just stared at us. Sarah reached for my hand. She stayed. I nodded. She found where she belongs. We stayed there for a while. I crouched and slowly pulled my jacket off. From the inside pocket, I took out the old cloth we had wrapped her in when we first found her. Dirty, frayed. I placed it gently on a stone and stepped back. Frost didn't approach, but she saw. Her ears flicked. A wind blew through the clearing. The mother let out a breath. Not a sound, just release. I turned to Sarah. Ready? She looked back at the snow leopards one last time. Yeah. We hiked back in silence. There wasn't anything else to say. Back at home, Jenny met us at the door. Her face searched ours for answers. She's okay, I said. She's where she needs to be. Jenny pulled Sarah into her arms. Good. That night, we sat on the porch, just like always. The mountains were dark silhouettes under the stars. A breeze moved the trees in gentle waves. Then, faint and distant, we heard it. Not a roar, not a growl, something softer, a call. Sarah leaned forward. Is that her? Could be. And every spring since, when the snow begins to melt and the hills bloom again, we hear that sound echo. Across the ridge, a reminder of a wild heart we were lucky enough to know. And of the moment we realized real love doesn't hold on, it lets go. Frost taught us more than any person ever could. About trust, about strength, about letting the wild be wild. And every year when the snow comes and the wind howls through the trees, I find myself looking to the forest's edge, wondering if she's out there, still watching, still guarding, still free.